It said it was live streaming. And I clicked the box to close the live streaming box. And it closed everything. Yeah. For me, it did.
Oh, yeah, you're off of there.
Let's try it again.
There you are.
Bro, my 14-year-old. Bro. Ready? I get take on the live stuff. I didn't push the got it. And if you don't push the got it. Sense, because if you don't want to be part of live stream. Yeah. You see, I responded to your email. You're kind of smiling. Maybe that's good. Okay, we got it. Yeah. All right, 6 o'clock. You guys ready? All right, so we're going to call to order City Council business meeting for Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. It is 6 p.m. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Reba. Here. Cool.
Here.
Livingston. Here. Mayor Tom Phillips.
I am here as well. We do have a quorum, so we'll move on. Item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 4 is welcome guests and public comment. We would open up the dais at this point in time for any public comment on non-agenda items.
Mayor, you need to do approval of the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you. Keep me honest. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to move any of the consent agenda items to the regular agenda? Letter E. Any other ones?
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Reva, seconded by Livingston to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. All right, motion carries. Now we'll get to welcome of guests and public comment. This is for non-agenda items. We'll open up dais. You can address council. We'll give you a 3-minute time limit. Realize we can't take action on those items tonight since they are not on the agenda. Also, if you'd like to comment on any item in the consent agenda, now would be the time. Any takers for tonight? Seeing none, we will move on. Item 5A, Casey Scheidel. Did I say that right?
You actually are one of the few that have ever nailed it.
All right, regarding signage at the sports complex.
All right, quickly want to talk and update the council on a few things on our signage as it continues to evolve at the sports complex. Once again, my name is Casey Scheidel. I'm the owner representative for Heartland Sports, which is the operator and owner of the Fairway Field portion of the sports venue. We currently have a temporary sign agreement for pole banners. For which is the signage on the pole. And we have had this permit here since 6/6. And And we, in this last week, have currently had those signs installed. So if you've been by the sports complex, you will see them. That says Field 3, and it has a sponsor on it. The design of those banners worked with our team and the city's team to carry common colors, common theme that is going to be distributed throughout the sports complex. One thing that has come up in our time here of working through signs and sign permits with your staff is that there is no permanent ordinance for sign banners in the city of Norwalk. There is a temporary ordinance for sign banners. So my ask, I guess, is of you is to develop that language, or our team work with Elliot to help develop that language to take it from temporary to permanent. So we want to leave these specific banners up year round, possibly change with time based on if an advertiser or a sponsor changes. So there's a couple ways that Elliot, I guess, has recommended adding the zoning ordinance to the PUD. This would take some amendments, but the size of these banners are 36-inch by 72-inch. It reflects our sponsor and the field number. Like I said, we want to use this year round, and we just are going to need a change from temporary to permanent for those sign banners. So does anybody have any questions about that to me? So I'm just asking for your team to develop that and eventually present it to you.
We can get that done. That's what you want.
Okay, that's all. No, that's all I have. That's all I found is it's temporary and we need it to be permanent.
You have to just keep talking.
Yeah, so if there's no questions, it'll come up. If there's no questions, then we'll follow up with color.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. All right, next presentation. Luke Paris is here to do commercial private street.
And I think Luke's gonna start it off. He's got a PowerPoint.
Would be that quick.
5 minutes.
I will talk fast, as I'm sure Luke will. Okay, public versus private streets. We are not talking about residential private streets, okay? Everybody clear on that?
Yes.
This came up because the roadway behind the new Fairway store started out as private, went to public. There's been some questions that it really didn't meet our ordinance, so it had to be considered public. So we're gonna go through and explain to council. Let's move this out of the way. That we will not be presenting a specific definition or proposed code language today, but we will provide a general recommendation. Some of the other things that we're going to go through is the financial impact of public versus private, maintenance costs, TIF incentives, efficient use of land, police enforcement, and what are the issues? What are the components of a roadway that should qualify as public? Discuss examples and ask city council for opinions, and attempt to identify the break point of where the differences between public and private, or how we would define that. So our general recommendation is that when the general public has access to something, it makes sense that it is a public service. However, this argument doesn't work when you consider any commercial parking lot. It also doesn't match our approach with residential subdivision, retention, and detention ponds. Those are situations where generally a large group has access to an area, but that's not considered public. Our focus becomes that of efficiency and taxpayer consideration. The next few slides will outline the financial impacts of public versus private. It is the financial considerations weighted against the perceived issues of private maintenance that lead us to a staff recommendation of we should encourage private streets anywhere possible. So just to talk about the property tax revenue, one simple example is to look at the private road that runs on the west side of the businesses that front along Highway 28. So at the far south end would be Norwalk dentist office, right next to Anytime Fitness, all the way north to where Medicap used to be. Now they're in a much better location. Easier for the drive through anyway. That road on the west side of those lots is considered private. If we force a location to go from private to public, we would see a loss of about $500,000 of commercial value for each quarter mile of roadway. Seems kind of strange, but that flat concrete does carry a value when it is on private property. And we know that that commercial value is of great value for balancing our tax base. In terms of maintenance, public streets are maintained with public funds for taxes. More public streets requires more tax revenue. Public funds are not keeping pace with maintenance needs. I put a little asterisk by that because I've got a point a little bit later on. We cannot say that public streets will be better maintained compared to private streets. I know this is a comment that a couple of the elected officials have brought up, and I certainly don't want to point out city deficiencies of public roads, but we certainly do have a few streets that need attention. The state legislature also continues to reduce revenues available to local government services. Going back to the maintenance needs, our public works director, you may have remembered under, I don't remember if it was his last budget planning season or a couple ago, but Wayne brought up that about $750,000 per year would help us maintain our current pavement condition index. Our PSI rating. So it's kind of our grade card for all of our streets. This does not help us bring all streets up to standard. $750,000 a year is what will allow us just to maintain the current standard. The key is if street inventory goes faster than revenue for maintenance. And today our budget reflects $600,000 a year for maintenance. Talking about incentives. Our emphasis for TIF incentives has been directed towards public infrastructure. More public streets equals more TIF incentives. And then use of land or just efficiency of land. Public streets require more land compared to private streets. The right of way is much larger. The style design of the streets is generally much larger as well. Patrol, more public streets will require more police presence and responsibility. The industry standard, our metro counterparts encourage the use of private commercial streets where possible. Developers and businesses would see reduced maintenance costs and available TIF incentives for public commercial streets. This means that private costs become city costs, which explains why other metro communities prefer private commercial streets.
Okay,
Take over, Luke.
so now we're gonna dig into some more details of some things. Got a couple slides, I'm just gonna talk through some things, but a lot of pictures to look at. And so we'll go through that here in a minute. But first, I want to talk about roads that we know to be public and how they're classified, just to kind of help you understand the hierarchy of things. And so these are FHWA mandated definitions for how to classify roads. The state DOT then works with local communities to classify our roads into those categories. An arterial road is a main road and has limited access. So when you're thinking of that, start at the beginning, think interstate, right? Really limited access. Highway 5, really limited access. And then down to Highway 28 is probably the most access that you would tend to want on a arterial road. And it starts to get fuzzy kind of at that line. If you're familiar with Highway 28, driving it up north into West Des Moines and Windsor Heights, it definitely changes from what we would consider an arterial road to more of a collector road once you get north of the interstate. If you've driven that Windsor Heights section, it's a very different feeling than what we have down here or through West Des Moines. Collector road would be the kind of intermediary road that takes people from neighborhoods and subdivisions and gets them out to the arterial roads. So in town, that would be things like Beardsley, North Avenue, 50th, 80th, Aurilla Road, those types of things. Limited access as well, though a little bit more access than an arterial road, especially if you look at arterial on the interstate standpoint. And then local roads. So local roads end up being everything else, right? And lots of individual property access off of a local road. And that's where it stops for highway defined, for FHWA definitions. It never goes beyond that from a definition standpoint. So I do have the clicker. That's right. Just a quick map to show what that looks like. Again, I explained those roads. Actually, to clarify, North Avenue is considered a minor arterial. So they do a little bit of a definition change there in town. So, but everything else would be arterials in town, Highway 28, North Avenue, and then everything else is a collector or a local street. So we went through and wanted to try and define some things that we might see in a commercial private setting and add a couple more definitions to this. First one we came up with was parking access lane. And that would be the area and roads that provide access to parking aisles. So you're coming off of the street and you're going through a development, getting to the parking aisle. And then obviously parking aisle, the things that are providing individual access to those parking spaces. So another, and this was the Smash Park area in West Des Moines. It's kind of got a roundabout there in the middle. You've got public streets on all four sides. And then the internal development is all private. This is a more traditional suburban development in Ankeny on Southeast Delaware Avenue. Again, you've got the kind of parking access lanes. You come in off the road. You've got a lane that goes in front of all the stores, but you also have this kind of frontage road that delineates between the outlots and the main parking areas. And then you have the various parking aisles. So one thing I want to talk about with the access lane from how we look at what we define private roads to be in our current ordinance, staff currently considers them to be a private road. That's how we would define that. Under what we believe our definition tells us of private road and how our code reads, any connection between two public roads or two different properties would mean that that private road was not allowed. We wouldn't allow it, okay? And then parking aisle, again, those are those individual access spots. So the next couple slides here, and I just want you to be thinking through these as you're looking at them, are various examples across the metro where I've gone in and tried to color code things. So green would be your public streets here. Red would be those parking access lanes. And then I didn't draw in every parking aisle because that was going to be tedious. So you have the kind of dark blue polygons outlining parking lots. And then there are occasionally areas where I kind of dropped in a light blue line that didn't quite fit either one of those. So it wasn't providing access between things or through things, but it was more circulation standpoints and stuff. So here you have Jordan Creek, probably an example of a very private development. You see the public roads, again, are on the outside. You have a pretty big development. Again, this is just the southern half of Jordan Creek. The northern half where the mall is and everything would reflect the same layout. And then everything else is internal. The kind of internal through streets are private. Some of those roads would feel more like parking lots, while others feel like public roads, really, when you're driving on some of the main north, south, east, west roads. An example on the other end of the spectrum is Prairie Trail in Ankeny. This is almost a purely public street development. A few private road connections there around their library and dropping back into parking lots. But for the most part, this is a development that has street fronted buildings with public street along them. Okay. Next one would be Grimes, 70th Avenue and Grimes, the Menards area that they're building out there. These next ones are a little more similar to the type of development that we're seeing in the Hughes Century Crossing area to the north. So I want to give you these two kind of extreme examples on one side, and then these end up being a little bit more somewhere in the middle. But again, here you have a big flag building of Menards set at the back, outlots out towards the main road, and then those kind of interior frontage roads and aisles in front of the building end up being private, as well as a couple of the access drives. I find it interesting on the east end of this, there's one little private stub and then one little public stub. And I'm not quite sure why they made that one public, but there it is.
Right.
Okay. Going back to Delaware and Ankeny, so this is pulled way far out in Delaware and Ankeny, so much so that I had to rotate it north. So if you're trying to to orient things. That Delaware is the green line on the kind of bottom half of the screen, going left to right, and so north is to the right-hand side of the screen. So on the bottom of the screen, I guess that's where you've got your targets, your I forget what's out there, a Home Depot, a Best Buy, and all that stuff. And again, you've got these large parking lots that separate the kind of big anchor buildings away from those smaller outlot uses. And you've got these private roads, parking access lanes that provide access amongst the entire development for people to move about to the different uses. The other side of Delaware is a little bit different. You've got some uses like the Walmart there, set way far back. But then there's some more, I guess, probably 80s styled strip retail that has that parking lot that's right up front of the building set back a little bit farther. And there's not really those anchor buildings on the far side of the west side of the road. I guess to the top of that green line. West Des Moines University and Valley West Drive. So in the upper right-hand corner would be the Target at University and Valley West Drive. There's also the Whole Foods kind of on the west side and where the Best Buy's at. Home Depot would be there in the center. And so again, you've got the public roads kind of flagging everything. They've got one public road that comes down, not really through the middle, but then a couple big access roads that go through the site that provide access across the different users, but again, is private. Similar thing to what we might see on the west side of Highway 28 with the Hy-Vee at University and Jordan Creek Parkway. So this is a pretty good example because you just have really kind of one flag user with public streets on either side of it and showing how those parking access lanes can serve as a through connection and provide access not only to the outlots, but provide access to the main parking lot in front of the building. And then in this case, also providing rear access for deliveries on the south side of that building. And the other side of that is the Wells Fargo home mortgage area, similar type of setup where those parking access lanes provide a through connection, not only accessing the parking lots, but also providing movement from the public street to another public street. And so with that, just jump back. So we've got all those things in mind, taking a couple look at those. I want to then just kind of show what some of our current existing commercial is, and then look at, again, that east side of Highway 28 with our fairway area and just think through what that should be. So I think really what we're trying to get at is these red lines. Right now, as a staff, we would say they should be public. Obviously, we've got some developments in town that are already private. Legacy on the far right-hand side of the screen being the probably most obvious one. But in the center of the screen also, we've started that process in the area behind McDonald's and up to go off of Beardsley. And you would anticipate that some private network would probably continue south of that. I think that was likely the intention of starting that development that way. And then with City State Bank and the area around Turnberry and Colonial Parkway on the east side of the highway, we do have plans that have been approved that will kind of snake that through. And that was all kind of contemplated via that Farms of Holland PUD and some development concepts from back when that area was first contemplated. So this slide then shows, I'm attempting to show here what our current east side of the highway looks like from a public perspective. We don't have a lot of red commercial on the east side of the highway, as you can see. It's really just that stub that goes north off of Colonial by City State Bank. So really what you've got is a pretty big local street network. The yellow are known projects that we have. The kind of four there that are right around the Chatham and Hughes Drive, Highway 28 area would be our fairway. The hotel on the north side, I'm trying to blank on the name of that one, and then fairway and retail center on the south side of that, or Fairfield. And then we have a a user looking at the southwest corner of that as well. And then Starbucks, they're down by Gordon. So that's all public street right now. This last slide is kind of zooming in on that area. So you've got Chatham as the green line on the south. And those are green lines that we know would come into play. Then just trying to look at what do we do with the rest of this? If those are kind of these parking access lanes, like we looked at in, maybe this West Des Moines Hy-Vee example, should that be public going up to Colonial Parkway that's currently shown as red? Or should those be private? I think our staff input of looking at other developments and everything would say that we should try to focus those on being commercial access drives and allow them to make that through connection. But that's what we're trying to get your feedback on. Another instance of a through connection that we've kind of already planned out, that if we look strictly at our code and how we've interpreted it, would be in the Norwalk Central area on the south side of Chatham. You've got the kind of grade in development with the blue parking lines, and then there's the red access line on the south side. That was always contemplated that we'd have a connection for Norwalk Central from Hughes Drive over to East 18. Again, per our code, we would consider that to be a private road, which would then not be allowed because of its connection to two public roads. So what we're trying to get is your thoughts and feedback on really any of these red lines, and we can go back to any of those maps if you want to. And is there a desire to rewrite code so that those would be private? Or do we keep doing what we've been doing?
So I specifically highlighted in pink the one road that's likely to be the next one to come up, and that's that extension that goes through to Colonial. Under our current definition, that would have to be public. We're proposing that we modify the ordinance to allow commercial to fall under a different subset so that we can identify in locations like this, it makes sense for those to be private.
So I'm not opposed to adding to our code that specifies the allowance of private roads or parking access roads or whatever we call them in commercial development. I am opposed to modifying our code, which seems to suggest that private roads would be allowed in general. So I'm not opposed to doing it in commercial. I think, my opinion is that this design here, fine, except it makes zero sense to me that you have public, private in a line. Zero sense to me.
Sure. Okay.
So either make them all, whatever the right word is, or make them all one or the other. But it makes zero sense to me that in the middle of the road, it switches from one to the other.
Yep. And
Or in the middle of the through, I guess.
I think I lost the ability to click back on that. That is a good point. I did just want to flip back to some of those that it's not an uncommon thing to see that happen. It tends to transition. And again, what we'd want to have would be, a public through street to make that you wouldn't want to have it transition in the middle of the road, but it's not an uncommon thing that I found in looking at these to have one side of the road have that be a public road that dumps out, and then the other side of the intersection is private. So-
I understand. I looked at the
Sure.
other examples. Some of those examples, I hope to God we never found.
Fair.
I don't care
That's
how
fair.
typical or standard or regular they are horrible. So that's not compelling to me. I just don't think it makes any sense to, in this picture, have those lower, it's the exact same, seems to me to be the exact same situation. It's the exact same road dividing the exact same properties, except one leads more into parking. I get that, but
Yep.
To me, it doesn't make sense. And I'm not saying it should be one or the other.
Mhm.
I'm just saying it should all be. That's my opinion.
And so, and also that the green area that was south of what Luke had circled, and that's the fairway road that we had discussions on. They originally proposed as private, and we said per our code, you need to change it to public.
Yeah, I don't
So-
like any of them being, I don't like any of that road being private, but I
Yeah.
can live with it all being the same thing.
But I think the hope had been at one point in time that would be private all north of Chatham. So there would be consistency, and so.
Which of those roads are already put in and established as? I mean, once it's put in, isn't it more difficult to change it between?
Yep.
Or-
So Hughes and Chatham
That one's in
and East 18th.
Right.
And they're probably
those.
Well, I think those long, the
Not
long,
very good with the map.
Yeah, north.
not arterial, but the long heavier roads make sense that they're city. I'm thinking more of the east and west seem to be city versus north and south might be better practice. Then it would be consistent.
I think the main point of the flexibility that we're looking for is every situation is going to be a little bit different. 75% of what's on this map you're looking at right now is undeveloped, unbuilt. Even the hotel concept that shows up here, whether we define those as public or private, will impact their plans.
And this is the first time we've ever had any of this, so. Right. There might be some adjustments and inconsistencies while we're adjusting.
So with flexibility comes interpretation and potentially confusion as well. I fear from more of an overall financial management perspective, the more green lines you see on this map, the higher future expenditure the city is going to have to deal with.
I'd like to see that added to the ordinance to give flexibility for us. Because like you just said, every situation is going to be different. And we should be able to reason our way through that. You know, the only concern that I ever really had with private streets that are commercial is their maintenance and maintaining them to standard. I don't know what vehicle we might have to ensure that that happens. Normally, most businesses are going to make sure that that happens because they want to keep customers. But we've had some circumstances already where it's been rather difficult and challenging to sometimes get it done. I don't know if there's any way to address that as a piece of what you're doing. But I'd appreciate it if maybe there's be some kind of legal review and see if there's a mechanism that we could have to use to make sure that standards are maintained. Thanks.
I think we should be flexible, just like I said, this is new to us. And I think it's gonna require flexibility.
I think we need to create the flexibility somehow in the code to make it work. As far as this one goes, the piece that, so you go use north. And I think if it's ending at another intersection with a public street that's going back towards the highway. I think that if you can make the delineation there with different type of access into the driveway of the other business, I mean, I think there's got to be some delineation when you're going from east to east. I think that's the important part there. Is that you've got to know you're going from public to private, so. I think there's ways to do that, and Luke's shared with me at P and Z a few times, some concepts for making sure that, the intersections can look differently, the access isn't, if you're going on a road, you're going flat from one spot to the other 90% of the time, some of the intersections go through without traffic. But most of the time you're going straight through. But if you're going into a driveway, you typically are going up. When you think about accessing a commercial parking lot, you're getting off the highway and you go, there's a ramp, just the curb's been cut there. So it's a distinction from the public road versus private roads. So I think that as long as we can maintain that, I don't know how you write that. I think that's- Go ahead, Daniel.
Same, flexible. I am concerned, as Ed said, about maintenance, because if you have private access roads and then within the aisles and stuff, you have private roads that connect parcels, that's fine. As long as all these parcel owners agree and understand what it takes to maintain it, and then it is maintained to some city standard. I mean, I don't know how they do it on the west side of 28 that goes behind the dentist office and the daycare
Poorly
there.
is how they do
They
it.
don't.
I know.
That's the issue.
I know, and there are a lot of people coming to this Norwalk Central area, and I would hate for the first thing they see to be really lousy roads full of potholes that connect, the hotel and the grocery store and everything, and I don't know how you enforce that. Unless it's a public road, I don't know how you do that. So that's something I would be looking for.
Well, and I mean, I guess what I would want to see is in whatever agreement is crafted, that it's very clearly delineated whose responsibility. Part of the problem with that road that goes behind the dentist's office and all of that stuff is that they don't agree on whose responsibility it is. So it needs to be very clearly delineated which business owner, which developer, which whomever, who is responsible, so that we have a place to go. As to say, this is a nuisance, you fix it, or we're fixing it for you and you're gonna pay us twice as much, whatever, right? I mean, we need to know that, and if we build that into it and we actually enforce it, then I can get behind that.
Pretty close it down.
Okay,
Yeah.
when are we gonna do that to this other road, right? This
Right,
is,
I agree.
this is years of a conversation and we have not done what I think we need to do. So that's what, if we're gonna do this, then we need to build into it a way that our city staff is gonna feel comfortable to enforce it.
All right. Other direction? Or do you got your direction?
I do, yes.
You got your direction.
All right. Anything else on that one then? Hearing none, let's go to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, we have expenditures, tax abatements. The July 2023 minutes of the regular city council meeting. Renewal of Class C retail alcohol license for Casey's General Store number 2568 at 1510 Sunset Drive. Have a renewal of Class C retail alcohol license for El Maya Mexican Restaurant at 2351 Sunset Drive, number 105. Have resolution approving the fiscal year 2023 street finance report. Have resolution approving partial economic development grant payment to Diligent HCC LLC. We have resolutions setting a date of meeting at which it is proposed to approve a development agreement with Huseman Construction LLC, including annual appropriation tax increment payments. We have resolutions setting August 17th, 2023 for a public hearing regarding a PUD amendment to amend land use parcel J in the Echo Valley PUD related to automotive service uses. We have resolution setting August 17th, 2023 for a public hearing regarding a PUD amendment to amend land use parcel E in the Brody's Landing PUD related to side setbacks. We have a resolution approving the renewal of an agreement with Midwest Breathing Air LLC. A resolution approving the promissory note and mortgage and contracts for the Norwalk Rehabilitation Assistance Program project for 715 Center Street. A resolution approving memorandum of understanding between the Iowa Department of Revenue and the city of Norwalk, Iowa regarding state setup programs. A resolution approving commercial improvement grant application for Jones Family Dental. And we have resolution appointing Madison Cohen to the Library Board of Trustees. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reva. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes,
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Item 6E is renewal license, a renewal of Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service for outskirts at 8334 South Arilla Highway.
So one of the things they attest to when they apply for these is that they're following all codes and laws and permits and such. I just want to make sure that as staff, you guys are checking on this one with this group because they have knowingly violated our code several times. Primarily with food trucks, they keep bringing food trucks in, and I know those food trucks are not vendor approved or approved in Norwalk. I just want to make sure that our staff is aware of that. That's all I think I want to say. I'm just a little frustrated that if they're gonna sign saying they're following the rules and codes, that they maybe need to have it be told that if they're going to have food trucks there, they need to make sure they're verifying that those food trucks are permitted. Otherwise, they're allowing unapproved uses on their property.
Any discussion? Can I get a motion? Okay, so motion by Lester, seconded by Livingston. Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
yes,
Livingston, Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Well, let's see, get down here to item 7, which is old and new business for consideration, discussion, and possible action. Item A is a public hearing on a proposed amendment to the Norwalk urban renewal area for the Huseman commercial. So we'll open up the public hearing at 6:39 PM. So the purpose of this hearing is to get public input on amending Norwalk's urban renewal area. This is being done to allow Norwalk to use property tax dollars in the form of tax increment financing to provide incentives for a Hilton True Hotel. Luke, Holly, Jean, I'll turn it over to you guys to drive.
This is for the Hilton True, as you mentioned, Huseman Construction, we've been working with for several years now to get their hotel established in Norwalk. And they're really close to the finish line, pretty excited for them. So we'll be just north of Chatham, right next to the new Fairway parcel. And they will be kind of considered Norwalk Central Phase 2, I guess, in that land area. The parcel that they're purchasing is not currently in our urban renewal area plan. So we have to amend the plan every time we add any new land into that area in order to create a TIF area that we can then draw or utilize TIF increment on development projects. So this is the procedure that we have to do, is to declare that necessity and amend our urban renewal area to include that land. And at 3.5 acres, a portion of that's for the hotel, the other portion is for a retail commercial outlot.
Jim, I think you hosted a URA consultation. Did you have any attendees at that?
I did.
Holly
Who did?
hosted.
Nobody.
Holly.
Holly did. Okay.
Nobody.
Sorry. Nobody attended? Okay. Huh? That make you nervous there for a second? I woke you up. Lindsay, have we received any oral or written comments on this item?
We have not. I will note that planning and zoning had to meet about this too, and they did meet and recommend moving forward.
Okay. Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 6:41 PM. Item 7B is a resolution to declare necessity and establish an urban renewal area pursuant to section 403.4 of the Code of Iowa and approve urban renewal plan amendment for the Norwalk urban renewal area for Huseman commercial. So we just had public hearing on this item. This resolution is to approve the amendment to the URA. Holly, you got anything to add?
I don't think so.
Any discussion or questions, comments from council?
Motion.
Any public comment? Okay, so I got a motion from Baker, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba.
Yes.
Cool,
yes,
Livingston.
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7C is first reading of an ordinance providing for the division of taxes levied on taxable property in the August 2023 addition to the Norwalk Urban Renewal Area pursuant to section 403.19 of the Code of Iowa. This is for the Huseman commercial. This item is needed to adopt the tax increment ordinance for the expanded urban renewal area that was just approved. Ollie, you got anything to add? Any discussion, comments, questions from council?
Second.
Okay,
We're trying to not be here till 10.
We got a motion by Livingston, Kid Baker to second. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I'm just gonna say, I think they get the award for being some of the most patient developers that we have worked with.
For sure.
Well done.
For sure. Lindsay, would you call?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7D. It's a third reading of an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Norwalk, Iowa by rezoning part of 3.5 acres east of Sunset Drive and north of Chatham Avenue from R4 high density residential to C2 community commercial. So this request is to change a portion of the 3.5 acres of land east of Fairway, north of Chatham, from R4 to C2. This is for the proposed hotel, the Hilton True, and it's part of the area required for development and is currently zoned for high density residential. So, Luke, anything else?
Nothing to add.
All right, any discussion or question with council?
Second.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reva. Any public comment or any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston. Yes. Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7E is removed from the table the consideration of a resolution approving an agreement to financially participate in a stormwater and drainage way restoration project at 3615 and 3705 Blue Stem Road. Can I get a motion to remove the item from the table?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion by Baker, seconded by Reva. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7F is a resolution approving agreement to financially participate in a stormwater and drainage way restoration project at 3615 and 3705 Blue Stem Road. So we have a stormwater drainage channel that is eroding and that needs to be addressed. Homeowners are willing to participate with the city in getting this repaired. At our meeting on July the 20th, this item was discussed and council requested the developer be contacted to see if they would be willing to participate in repairing this problem. Luke, what was the answer?
No.
All right. Any further comments?
Still opens up can of worms. I think the developer should be on for this. I think the developer should be sued by the landowners for failure to build this correctly. in the first place. I'm sure it had anything to do with it. It may not be legally available to them now, but it wasn't built right to begin with. It's not ours. I'm struggling with this. It's all in the, to me, the developer is the issue.
That's that pretty much the last one. So, ditto.
I think, but we have a precedent where we helped out on a creek that was connected to the daycare. Where we did something like this, that, I forget the name of it. Crayons and,
Crayons to Pencils, the one right off. of
yeah, where
Highway
they
28.
had erosion and we stepped forward and helped them with some grant money.
My recollection of that discussion, in fact, I think that came up during budget time where we talked about possibly using some stormwater funds to help match some dollars if the property owners got together to do improvements, that maybe the city would help participate.
Right.
Which, again, I don't have perfect memory, but my recollection was if property owners come forward with a financial plan and request for the city to participate and help, that's when we would be more open to that.
And just from a staff perspective, we've not done evaluation or had B&K go out and do an evaluation to determine why the cause of that is. So I don't think I can tell you that was done improperly or that something failed or this, that, and another. it's a drainage way that eroded, which is a common thing that happens in drainage ways, especially as additional development happens. So I wouldn't feel confident in this point in time saying that that was done incorrectly, especially given rules change, best practices change. I know we wouldn't do that today. We'd do some things differently today, but I can't comment to whether it was inappropriate at the time it was done.
And this might have nothing to, this probably has nothing to do with this situation, but this developer has common nickel and dimed us on every other project they've ever done, so. In my opinion, that developer needs to step up to this.
One of the options that we had discussed last time is if you feel uncomfortable with a third, or if you believe the developer should carry a share. Another opportunity would be to offer a quarter of that cost, expecting the developer to come in with a quarter, just another possibility.
I think there is, like I said, there is some precedent.
My question on it, Luke, would be, I guess, what's the compelling public interest that would, necessitate or justify our involvement? Or can anybody tell me the compelling public interest?
I think it's, to some extent, it becomes maybe even a bit of a legal opinion. I know that one of the things that Wayne, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of the things that Wayne has struggled with is some of these drainage ways involve drainage or flow from a larger area, a significant amount of which comes from public roads. So I don't know if that answers your question, Ed, but the concept is if it's, at what point does some of that stormwater become a component of public interest because it's flowing across public streets?
Right, and so I remember clearly that was part of the argument that the folks on Lakewood Drive set forth when there was all the failure of that road, because the water now runs down all the roads after the legacy and all that stuff was put in up the hill. And the response was, yep, that's the cost of development. And, this is what happens. My struggle is a couple of things. My struggle is that what this says is a number of property owners and the entire neighborhood benefit from the storm water area and benefit from an improvement, and yet there's only 2 homeowners that are participating. My struggle is that if this is what we can expect to happen over time, how many other projects are going to be brought forth? My struggle is that there is a request, at least I took it as a request from city staff, to allow more private roads and commercial development because we can't keep up with the public roads that we have and the expense that it costs. But now we're going to spend $30,000 that we really need to spend someplace else to help improve this one area. So, right, I don't want to be, I appreciate that Mr. Kramer and Ms. Godwin came forward and are asking for our help. I just don't feel like this is the precedent that I want to set. I don't feel like this is the way I want to go. And while we have examples of, we have helped out places in the past, we also have examples of we have.
Well, I can, the mayor had asked me about the stormwater down on the south side where we talked about near the former church, which is now the daycare. And part of that also was the state gave the city a grant to help fix some of that drainage way. And that drainage way, was actually eroding and houses were at risk. Which, you could either, you can easily differentiate from this case. Where housing's not at risk and there's
One
one
house
house
for sure is at risk. It's,
and
you can't walk down there. It looks like it's ready to cave.
so the
One house.
city on behalf of those homeowners did apply for a grant and receive a fairly sizable grant for rebuilding that. I'm not gonna say the city didn't bear some of their own expenses also, because I'm sure they did. And I guess, my opinion is certainly the city could legally contribute this money, but I certainly don't debate with what else has been said, because these are improvements upon a private area. Another aspect of this is if the city does contribute, we're gonna formalize the easements a little bit more, because we are requiring them to sign more formal easements with it, recognizing whose maintenance responsibilities is in the future, and recognizing it's not the city's responsibility to do that. However, I certainly don't dispute anything that was argued here. I don't think we're not stuck paying it because of precedence, but I don't think it certainly would be within the city's purview to pay it, because it does drain an awful lot of ground from the south through there, so.
Do we have any control over how it's repaired, or do we have any? Maybe Luke knows.
My understanding on this is that we had a known engineer that was paid by the homeowners to design this project. And Luke had our engineer review it. Though he didn't get technical with it, he looked at it and said that looked like a reasonable fix. Is that correct, Luke?
Correct.
Other comments, Scott? Do you have any public comment?
Mayor, I'm kind of wondering if this isn't a candidate for like a drainage or water district, where all the homeowners that are in that area participate in sharing the cost of maintaining it. And the reason I say that is because we've got this one in front of us now. We're going to have other ones in front of us. It's just a matter of time. And how fair is it to all the taxpayers of the city, unless there's a compelling public interest to protect the property of a few, at their expense, right? Private property. But if it's in the city's interest to maintain those areas, then maybe we need to look at an approach where all the people served by that directly, their private property owners, are involved, and then the city gets involved. I mean, that's kind of where I see it. It's to me, I'm scratching my head, because I'm thinking, well, I'd like it. Someday I'm going to have to replace my driveway, to my house. Now, if there's some reason that it's in the city's interest to repair my driveway because it connects to the public street, maybe there's an argument for it. I don't know. But I'm probably not going to see it. I mean, that doesn't work for me. Okay. And so I guess I would like a different approach on this than the one that's been suggested to us. Anyway, those are my thoughts, Mayor.
You can state your name and address.
Yeah, I'm Adam Shepner with Nillis Associates. We're at 1933 Southwest Magazine in Aiken. We were the engineer that Mr. Kramer and Ms. Godwin hired to do the design on the Roding Creek in their backyards. As was stated, there is a large drainage area that comes through this area and outlets through the 60-inch pipe that's right between their homes, and it has created somewhat of a nuisance, specifically for Ms. Godwin. She has a retaining wall that's right there. If it continues at the rate that it's going, we're worried that it could potentially undercut her retaining wall or her shed that's right next door. But like I said, we did the engineering design that was reviewed by the city, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions regarding that for you.
So how did it fail?
It didn't look like there was proper outlet protection, or enough time has gone on that I believe this development was done in the early 2000s, that at one point there could have been enough outlet protection to control the velocity of the water coming out of that pipe. And as time went on, it just eroded right at the bottom of the pipe, and there's a severe drop off, and it has eroded the banks of the creek along there also.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, Council Reynolds Kramer, 3705 Blue Stem Road, new neighbor to a few of the council members here. So been in town just a year. I'm being a good neighbor in this situation. Linda approached me shortly after I moved in and let me know that she was very worried about a retaining wall, even to the point of it could affect her house. And when you take a look now, because I've trimmed a lot of trees back, you can see that for sure there's a problem. Obviously, a problem way before I got here. One of the comments Councilmember Lester made about suing the developer. You know, I like to try and make things as painless and simple as possible. Going through lawsuits and things, I don't think is anything that anyone wants to get into. So in having good discussions, we came up with this, we all share in this project together. You can talk about the why and what caused things, but the question that I have been talking to Luke about, and Luke, maybe you can help here just a little bit, is not only did Jim, you mentioned about wanting us to sign an easement, which I guess had not been done earlier, which obviously is another issue, but it comes down to the fact that if I can just go handle this ourselves, then maybe we would, but we're being told we can't. And so in this situation, it's hard to understand if the city is going to have some control over what can be done. If you have control, then you have to have also some interest in it from the standpoint of financially. That's the big question. So for instance, Luke, can we just go in and do our own thing? Or does the city need to approve this?
We would want to see some plans on what would happen to a drainage way.
And if we change
Now
it, right?
to more, I guess, obscure the answer a little bit. You can go do lots of things, right? And the city would come back later and say, you shouldn't have done that. Or you may cause other issues. You could go fill that area in and not tell the city. And then when somebody gets flooded, you know, there's a whole different issue. To do things properly, we would want to see a plan for what the drainage way would look like so that we can ensure that it's going to function properly.
So in our opinion, this is a great way that the city and the group can make sure things are done properly. And also at the same time of assuring that share in the responsibility. Tried to make it as simplistic as possible when we came up with the third version. Being a business person and understanding you have to adapt, if you would take Luke's proposal and go a fourth and let us fight it out with the developer. That's just business and we'd have to, accept that. But to say that you would not participate, if that would be the decision, then we would feel like, okay, we will move forward on our own, but you won't have the ability to dictate what's going to happen.
Well, I think that line of reasoning though, I mean, when you build your house, you had to come to the city for approval and inspections and everything, and the city didn't participate in the cost of constructing that house. Similar to the drainage ways, the city does inspect it. If you built a shed or a fence in the backyard, we'd inspect it. If you poured a foundation for a deck, we'd inspect it. We wouldn't participate or expect to participate in those expenses. So, I'm
It'd
not,
be all new, correct?
well, no, it could be rebuilding the deck,
Okay.
so.
But probably we wouldn't be, as I believe council member Ed mentioned on the phone that the driveway. So if we rebuilt the deck, we wouldn't be asking the council for money.
No, but what I'm just saying is simply because we require inspection, most construction, reconstruction requires permits, requires inspection by the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once again, this is a weird situation. It's no one here, it's their fault,
Absolutely.
right? We're just trying to fix things and trying to do it in a way that is fair to everyone. And so, once again, our proposal, we think is fair, a third. If you want to go to a fourth, that type of deal, we would have to accept it, obviously, but nothing doesn't seem like that makes a lot of sense. Any questions for me? Thank you. Appreciate your time.
We established why we didn't get a movement on this originally.
I can't tell you the why, just that it didn't exist.
It did 20 years ago. Could be that, the developer at the time was pretty pretty, I'm not gonna say controlling, but he, you know, that the argument at that point in time would have been, well, this is drainage onto the golf course. And that was, you know, they wanted to maintain control over everything and, so that maybe that emphasis is not there anymore. That had been there before. So right now on the plat map, it shows an easement, but it doesn't have the details as far as maintenance requirements. So there is an easement, it's just we'd have more detailed one that outlines maintenance requirements and whose responsibilities it are, is, things like that.
Or it's an easement, the city has the easement, or it's a private easement, or that's what's not shown.
That's what's not shown. On the plat map itself, it shows drainage. So what we know is that property owners have the obligation to allow drainage. over the property.
There's other areas where we have drainage easements. It's specified that it's the city's.
We,
the city's-
our standard operating procedure now is to label them as private or public, depending on what they are, and then require a document that talks about all the details of what that means to be a private easement and the maintenance responsibility. And in other instances, when we have had issues and things, and we've been able to pull out that easement document and say, well, this is private and it's your obligation to maintain it, then.
Well, in the developments we've seen lately, where we've had streams running through, and there's an easement, and that's part of the drainage way. I mean, the city has no responsibility for maintaining or constructing anything in those easements, correct?
That is correct.
So why is this any different? That's what I was struggling with before. I feel your pain. But I think that we are setting a dangerous precedent here, and it doesn't make, I said last time, it doesn't make sense to me why we would be doing this. It is private property. It is no different from any other drainage way that's approved in any other residential development that we have around town, and I don't understand why the city is involved.
I would have to go back and re-listen to the minutes from a previous meeting where we specifically talked about some stormwater grants. And my recollection, I'm probably repeating myself, but I distinctly recall the concept of if there are larger grants, like of a larger area, that's when the city could participate if another group comes forward. So that's why it's different in this situation, because we've had other requests before that. Since that point in time, this is the first one that I know that's come up where there's been private participation, private funding proposed, asking the city to participate, not just to fix it, but participate.
And
I was gonna say, I've got a little different take on this, and I stand by, I don't think there's a right, I don't think we're required to fix it, however. I think I'm content with 25%, which is $22,143. And we're buying the easements to get the easements recorded. In my mind, that's the piece that, so we're participating in the project to get these. My cap is the 25%. And probably a little above what we would do if we went and had to buy the easements exactly, but in my mind, that fixes pieces of it in my head, but I don't know. I still don't like it. I know. And a lot of this goes back to the developer and the sour taste I have in the mouth from him because he's not been a very good.
Our streets and everything else he did was
It's
slapshod.
it's been hit and miss on stuff, and even the commercial side, he's brought us a bar and wanted an extra $250,000 grant on bringing us a bar into town, and I just am frustrated with him and gets asked all the time for money like that, and he can't even step up and take $22,000 to fix a problem that he created, so. That's my frustration with this. I'm content with the 25%, because I think even at the last council meeting, I felt like we were all kind of on board with the 25% number being acceptable. I don't know that the third is gonna get there to me, so I don't know. That's where I'm at least today.
I agree with that.
Okay. So somebody want to make a resolution to participate at 25%?
I'm gonna motion to 25% up to $22,143. Pending getting the easement cleared up. And signed.
Second.
Okay. So I got a motion from Lester, seconded by Baker. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
No.
Cool,
No,
Livingston,
No.
Lester.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion fails. All right. Moving on to item 7G, we have a resolution approving an extension to the temporary parking lot waiver for lot 3 of Hughes Century Crossing Plat 6. So visitors to the Fairway Fields have been parking at lot 3 of Plat 6 of Hughes Century Crossing. They're able to use that lot because council approved a waiver for parking there. Council requested that the waiver be reviewed at this meeting. Want to quickly add that I appreciate how quickly Casey and his team acted on the visual buffer fencing that was requested by city council. Luke Paris, floor is yours.
Yes, let me get that pulled up. So as you mentioned, a big component of that meeting on the 6th was the installation of that buffer screen, which hopefully you've been out and seen. It looks like it's doing its job. Few other notes to where we're at with things. Paving, I think, is substantially complete of all the parking lots from last I've heard. The extension of East 18th has been paved. And I think Chatham should be paved all the way now. Last I had seen when I wrote our staff report was there was a small chunk of it left. So access to our additional parking is getting done. There is still, I believe, some need for the contractors to use that for some staging of the construction of things. But I think we're getting close with that. So our recommendation would be to continue to, I guess, extend that temporary parking area until we're certain that that parking lot can be used here in August. So I don't have a firm date on that. I don't know if you've heard anything, Holly.
Yeah, we were just out there today and Jeff said by the end of August, it'll be ready. They just have to do striping, so it could be sooner
And put up lights too, right?
on the south parking lot and East 18th.
And I think is Tony on from B&K on?
He's not, no.
Okay, I think we're hopeful to get the acceptance of Chatham and East 18th on the August 17th agenda as well. I know he was talking about doing a walkthrough soon. So, I mean, that'd be the other part of that is we want to make sure that's accepted as public infrastructure so that the access of it can happen. So I would anticipate that either happens on the 17th or our first meeting in September.
Are the neighbors okay with the temporary fencing? Did that solve their concern?
I have not heard from the neighbors. I don't know if anyone else has.
I would assume yes.
I haven't heard anything. I've heard some couples, but they said that the fencing is better, but it's still not. They're not happy about it. They had a lot of other concerns that we kind of just pushed off and said, "Well, it's just the fencing." So my concern is that at that meeting where we approved this, we were told that the parking across to the west, a lot across to the west was not available for parking. And the last 3 weekends, there have been cars parked in that, and they're consistently parked there, and there's no enforcement from your staff. I'm sorry. The lack of enforcement on that side, I'm a no against approving more temporary permit parking if they're not gonna. They were telling us this lot wasn't available for parking, and yet it was being used, and there were probably 50 or 60 cars in there at one point. They were 3 or 4 rows deep, and it was not, after being told that wasn't available, that was the more ideal spot for temporary parking, not up to the neighbors' houses. And that's my issue with it is that if that's available and use it, if not, why did we do this other one? If we were told that wasn't available, but now, for 3 weekends in a row, we've allowed parking out there. I don't know. That's the part that bothers me there is that we were told that wasn't available and that was why we had to go back to the spot that backed up the houses.
I don't know.
Okay, so I got a motion by Livingston, a seconded by Reba. Do we have any public comment?
Casey Shuttle, representative of Hardman Sports Properties, and my request last month for this temporary parking lot. Yes, we reached some type of agreement to do this fence. I got on it right away. Yes, I know that there are cars parking into that west property as discussed. But as to enforce it heavily, we will then push those cars into the neighbors and for the most part aren't causing too many problems by being into that west lot. Yes, it is the developer's property and not our property. He is aware that we are doing that. The east parking lot that we talk about in the northeast corner of the fields up there is not done yet. While there is good progress on the north lot, East 18th, it will be coming in the next month. So yes, I am requesting for another month extension onto this temporary until those the east lot can be opened. So I am aware of Councilman Lester's concerns of that west lot. And we are not enforcing it in lieu of those big tournaments that people were parking over there. The big tournaments at the facility are done, the 5-day type of things. The rest of the fall, while still will be busy on the weekends, are not intending to be the large size of those few weekends that those people were parked out there. So, but we are doing our best. I am asking for it.
Can I make a suggestion? Make sure that whoever's renting your facility enforces the parking and that if things shutting down their tournament until those cars are moved. They weren't cars, they were parked there and not in the temporary parking you had. It's true. And the problem I have again is that we were told that wasn't available. And you had to do it over here, and that's the problem. Is that spot available for temporary parking?
No.
Then why were we allowing temporary parking back?
Hard to stop the flood.
Let's turn them down.
No more
Real
people,
fast.
no more people to your city.
Right.
So.
Right, thank you. We did it. Yeah.
Okay.
Lindsay, you got the motion in the second, right?
Yeah, do they want a deadline on it or just?
Yeah, you want to revisit on September 7th or just let it go?
I asked for 1 month, so this is just for this month and then I will need to request it.
Wasn't it on here for September 1st?
Okay. What were you asking, Stephanie?
I thought it was only until September 1st.
For September 3rd.
The original deadline that we put in the original temporary parking agreement, I guess, our waiver was September 1st. And so whether that's a month from today,
That's not changing, right?
I think in there we would stick with the original waiver agreement, which would be September 1. I mean, if you wanted to say a month from today, I'm not sure that.
Okay, so here's my only question, right? If it expires September 1 and something happens when the new parking is not done, then for 6 until the next meeting, there's no action. So can't we just do it until the next meeting instead of the first of the month? I mean, that makes sense to me, so that if there needs to be an extension, we have a meeting to extend it or discuss it, rather than it going
Yeah.
dormant for however many days.
Correct. So,
So can I amend my motion?
sure,
I would
to.
amend my
September 7th?
motion to allow it until September 7th. Is
Awesome.
that the next meeting?
Yes.
That September meeting? Yes, that's my
Yes.
motion.
right.
Second, the motion was amended.
Okay, so. I have an amended motion by Livingston, seconded by Reba. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston. Yes. Lester,
No.
Baker.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item 7H is resolution to increase police department staff by hiring 1 police officer. So back in January, when we were discussing the cops grant and how those officers were going to be added, it was discussed that we were going to hire 1 officer on January the 1st, 2024, and another one on June 30th, 2024. And that would fill all of the COPS grant positions that are available. But that would have required an extension to the 3-year grant limit. Due to the availability of one of our officers, which we can't really talk about this at this meeting since it's a personnel and a personal issue. Chief Staples would like to hire the January 1 position now. This hire is in no way a replacement for any current staff. It is a new position. Also want to thank Chief Staples for his work to apply and receive COPS grant funding. These are short-term grants, but the revenue is significant. In this, I think in this situation, it was approximately $350,000. So,
Total, yes.
Yeah.
For 375 total.
okay,
If I could just say,
sure.
so this and the next item were originally on the consent agenda. I asked to have them moved to discussion, and I'm not, was simply because last meeting, we sat through an hour-long presentation about the state legislature's changes and how that was going to affect our future budget, and that we shouldn't be hiring any more people. So I thought this at least deserved a little more discussion than a consent agenda item.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. So I just wanted
Fair
to
enough.
share that with the department heads about, that's why I asked to move it.
Okay. Chief, you got anything to add?
No, this is, like the mayor said, just the COPS grant position that, we intended to use earlier or later in the year. Opportunity now with a spot available at the academy and a dynamite candidate that we've interviewed and has completed almost all of the background work. And I would hate to lose her as a potential candidate. Makes sense to me to just do this now. I will say that if you approve this tonight, next meeting, I'll come back with a budget amendment for training costs and equipment costs related to this officer position. In addition to another officer position that is already budgeted, it's the replacement for an officer for resignation. That candidate will have to go through the academy, and we don't have that money budgeted either. So just letting you know now that next week there'll be a budget amendment for the costs, the equipment and training costs associated with what happens tonight.
Yes.
Jackie, that is an excellent question. We had that long discussion, and it's obvious that you were paying close attention to what we were talking about and some of our concerns for staffing. When we were doing budget planning last fiscal year for this fiscal year, we knew that the legislature had some proposals that were going to impact our tax revenues in the future. We essentially were concerned with any new hiring until we knew what that legislation looked like and what the impacts were. It was at that presentation to council that we finally had a good handle on what that looked like and what the impacts would be. There was one major factor from my perspective financially that was going to make a decision on how we move forward. And that was council saying, are we going to try to utilize all those new tax revenues available to us? Or are we going to say, no, we only want a portion of those new tax revenues? And this is referring to the retirement of the Echo Valley TIF, significant new dollars coming online. So at that meeting, the direction that we had from council is we need those dollars. There are services expected in our community. We want to provide those services effectively. That message to us was that now for this request to fill that COPS position, and the one after this talking about the fire department, that those are critical departments that we need to fill those positions with direction from council that you're comfortable receiving those new revenues. We, from a management perspective, felt comfortable moving forward and recommending that we proceed with the new hires.
And me too. I just wanted that all to be a record.
Excellent question. We didn't plan this ahead of time, by the way, but worked out well. Thank you.
Any other discussion, comments, questions from council? Okay, I got a motion from Livingston, seconded by Lester. Any public comment? Or further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester, Baker,
Yes.
Riva.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Item 7I is a resolution to approve the conversion of 2 part-time positions to full-time for the fire department. So the part-time staffing model for the fire department personnel has worked well in the past, but that model has run its course in the metro and no longer works well. Chief Porter has requested that we create new full-time positions to replace hours that are already being filled by the part-time staff. New dollars needed for these positions would be for benefits like PTO and insurance, since the paid hours are already budgeted. In other words, we aren't adding any hours. We are changing the hours filled by part-time people to an individual that would be full-time. Full disclosure, if you remember, chief's staffing plan is to eventually convert 6 part-time staff to full-time positions, I believe.
For now, the staffing plan that'll come forward this year is going to be to convert these 3. And then ask for 3 of the SAFER grant for next year, which is very similar to the COPS grant. Current stipulations of the SAFER grant are 3 years free wages and benefits, and they come online at 100% on year 4. So, and then we would incrementally add some separation, but to be at capacity, we should be at 6 per division, 6 per shift. I guess to back up a little bit so that council has a good understanding of how we staff the fire department. Outside of administration, which is myself and the fire inspector, we run 24-hour shifts. So there are 24 hours on, 48 hours off, which gives us 3 divisions. Of each of those divisions, 2 of them are full-time and 2 of them are part-time. So half of our response plan is staffed by part-time individuals at this time. The part-time plan is just not working anymore. The majority of our part-time staff are full-time in other agencies. They're getting mandatory and called back. We're seeing just a shortage in the industry as a whole. And so we're looking to convert those positions from part-time to full-time to provide some stability to the response plan. Looking at national averages and standards, at a population of 15,000, we should have 6 in our response plan daily. So at 4 even, we're still behind. Like at per capita, we should be at like 1.5 some firefighters per 1,000, and we're currently at 0.80 at our 4 per shift. So this conversion is just to give us some stability in our current plan, but we do need to look forward into adding more to the response plan by ways of the SAFER grant, hopefully. So.
A question on the math.
Mhm.
Maybe I don't understand. the
Sure.
chart. Okay, so the part-time column is the current, what we are currently paying these
That's
2
correct.
part-time positions.
So this is for 1 employee.
One.
Yep, and to make it look so that you're making a fair comparison between a full-time employee and a part-time employee, and I had a conversation with Jean about this as well. The 69,000 for the wages is just wages for the part-time employee. So it's 2,920 hours a year. That's what we look at those positions if they were a full-time position at the hourly rate that we pay a part-time employee, but it does not include any overtime or part-time or a PTO because they don't accrue overtime. They don't accrue the PTO. So the difference that we're seeing between the 69,000 and the 81,000 is a little bit of a wage increase for those 2,920 hours plus overtime and PTO. So they have,
I'm
yeah,
trying, what I'm
Yep.
trying to do is I looked at this chart and I
yeah,
was trying to get from that chart to the funding.
I understand. So,
The math doesn't work.
right. So the wages, like I said, are separate. I should have put a line there so you could have seen the difference of what we are looking at. And we're looking at 1 employee here. So the difference in wages between the 2, sorry, just 1 second. Is $12,000 between a full-time employee and part-time, just for the wages for 1 employee. Okay, and then the difference in benefits is the 28,200. So then the total for 1 employee is 40,600. So the request for today is to convert 2 of the positions. That will leave 1 of our divisions still being staffed with half full-time, half part-time, just to be clear there as well, because we run 3 divisions.
Jackie, what's your question?
It does nothing. It's.
Okay, so and let me throw this out here as an option that I would like council to consider as Chief said, have 3 divisions. We're going with to convert 2 with, I would like you to consider converting 3. 1 for each division.
So, not following. So 2 part-time positions to 1 full-time.
No,
No.
2 part-time positions to 2 full-time.
Thank you. That's, you're asking us to do 2 part-time to 2 full-time. That's, your ask is,
My ask is for
That's-
2. The mayor is suggesting that we convert all 3 today instead of
I'm asking
delaying
you
the
to do
conversion
3
of the
part-time
3rd.
to 3 full.
Do we have the money to do this? Being last.
that's.
Dean's about ready to
not-
kill me right now.
No, I'll just tell you that it would probably put us right at our 30%, based on our estimates. General fund's about 10 million a year. And this position that we just, approved. And then if these 3, we probably use about 2% of our reserves for those, 2, 3, 4 positions.
2% of reserves, but they're ongoing costs.
Correct.
Which goes back to the discussion we had before about those new revenues that are coming in.
Right.
And so part of this decision is you are specifically making a decision for the fiscal year 25 budget. Automatically, we're making a staff decision to utilize some of those new revenues that we will receive.
I just was wondering, okay, so in the last discussion we had about those new revenues, is that we were going to kind of hold some of that back. We weren't going to release it all as a tax reduction because we knew that coming up, we're gonna have obligations like the water tower and other roads and bonding issues. So from that revenue stream that's going to come from that tip area rolling off, are we okay committing to an ongoing expense for 3 individuals? I just want to make sure we're not cut short.
Well, let me remind you of something. And so I want to commend Chief Porter for her work in increasing revenue for the fire department from several sources. So city managers tasked departments with thinking through those alternative revenue sources to offset staffing. Chief Porter's really done a great job at achieving that. Fire department has been more than diligent in the review and oversight of like EMS billing. They've successfully negotiated a significant increase in contractual services. And she's worked really hard to achieve some grant awards. So she's bringing in additional revenue that wasn't there before. That really is offsetting.
Yeah, I'll say from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23, we increased our revenues $140,000. And that was just from changing our billing agents. I think that was pretty significant for 1 year for us. We also opted into the GEMT program, which is that federally funded program that helps kind of bridge the gap between your Medicare and Medicaid patients. And we're expected to bring in another 60,000 projected for fiscal year 24. So though that is accounted for in our general fund budgets, the mayor is correct. Like that's been work that the fire department has done to try to help offset some of those costs.
And I recognize that you've done a great job and someday coming will even pay their fair share.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we don't hire somebody and then have a situation 2 years from now that we have this commitment and we have to lay people off because we can't afford staff. I mean, it doesn't sound like we're at that position remotely there, but I just want to make sure because these are people's lives, so.
Sure. And if I could also take a moment, I just, while I'm here, I want to make it well known that we are not being supplemented by volunteers in our department at this time. So for those of you that have lived here for many, many years and thought that people were coming from home to answer the call, they are no longer doing that. So the staffing levels that we have at that staffing level of 4, at that 0.80 firefighters per capita, that's all you're getting. So that's when we're relying on that mutual aid.
Stephanie, Jean would probably give a similar answer, but different from mine. And to respond to you, we can afford it up until we can't. In other words, we can afford these positions up until somebody else comes forward and says, well, I need to add staff.
Yes.
So these that are coming on board, we are confident those new dollars coming in will cover these positions. But it's if another department, if the library comes in and says, hey, we need a program assistant or teen program person, and they want to ask for somebody at that point in time, because we approve these other positions, it's potential that we have to say no to those other new positions.
Well, I don't have a problem with making it 3 full-time positions. Police, fire, public safety to me is high importance. I want to make sure that everybody's adequately staffed.
So I'd really like, Gene, you may have a different answer than me on the question, can we afford this into the future?
I think in the first year, we're fine. Especially based on what you said 2 weeks ago, that you wanted to take that full amount. I'm with Luke. It's the future years that we're uncertain about. And if people come forward with requests in the future, I don't know if we'll be able to take those on as well.
And that's the fact whether we do 2 now or.
Well, 3 now is just gonna cut more into,
Yeah.
so we're August 3rd. And, you know, and I put the new revenues in as well when I figured that what we're using. You know, if our revenues are up but I guarantee people are gonna be coming in and asking for budget amendments. Greg's already telling you he's gonna bring one. So we're really limiting that. But if you wanna do it, we'll make it work.
You know, Mayor, if I could make a comment.
Bet.
Well, we spent a decent amount of money on fire trucks and fire equipment because we knew it was important for our community, for our safety and for all these new buildings we're putting up. Sure would be a shame if we couldn't move those and use them. That would be a terrible position for us to be in. Now, that said, I share some of the concerns that are there as far as going forward. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. We got no idea what the state's going to do next year. I don't think they do either. And so when you go forward, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. The other day, on a personal note, it kind of reinforced the importance for our EMS program and the people that are here. My wife had an episode due to some prescription drugs that she had. And we availed ourselves to our ambulance service that we have in the community. And I'll tell you what, the service was fantastic. Okay. And it really put forward in my mind how important and essential this service is. And if those units can't roll, we're talking about lives. If the fire units can't roll, maybe it's lives and property, right? So we have a personal responsibility as leaders in this community, I think, to make sure that we have adequate staffing levels in those areas, right? In my mind, the function of it takes precedence. I'm not talking about individual staff members versus individual staff members. That doesn't matter. It's the type of service, the function that's provided that makes it so essential by nature. Anyway, that's where I'm coming from. We just need to make sure we're doing it right and we have enough there to make it work.
Yeah, and if getting and hiring part-time staff is an issue, we might want to, I think we need to address that issue.
Motion.
4, 3. Second.
I got a motion by Livingston, a seconded by Reva to convert 3 part-time to full-time.
3 part-time to 3.
3?
I do
Yes.
have to say that when we started this, the way I read this is convert 2 part-time to full-time. I thought we were converting 2 part-time to 1 full-time.
That's what I
Okay.
thought, yeah.
Right, so just FYI,
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
don't, it's all
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
That's why the
so-
math wasn't working.
I know, it's, I was like, I'm not, yeah, anyway, so, yes, 3 part-time to 3 full-time.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or public comment? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston.
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
I appreciate it.
Let's see, item 7J.
What's that?
Item 7J, the second reading of an ordinance amending the legacy PUD within the city of Norwalk, Iowa by allowing the homes per acre in the PUD parcel 3 to be up to 25 and to exempt 20 studio apartments from the city's balcony patio requirements. So this item is to allow the builder to add studio apartments to their apartment building, waive the requirement for balconies for those studios. I'd like to point out that even though there is a higher density in this area, there's going to be fewer people living there than what is currently allowed. At the last meeting, council asked that language be added to the PUD to tie this change to their project. And I believe that change is included with this reading. Luke, anything else?
Just on page 3 of your packet is the updated language that we added. It's essentially a bulleted list that describes all the aspects of the project that was presented as part of the first reading, and I believe meets the intent of council's direction to write an ordinance that gets us what was presented.
Okay, questions, discussion, council? Do we have any public comment?
Yeah, I'd like to say a few words.
Okay. Could you state your name and address?
Mike Logren, 834 Sawgrass Drive, Norwalk, Iowa. First, before I start, I'd like to invite all of you and the directors on the side. I'm having a front porch meeting Wednesday, August 9th, 6 to 8 p.m. And you're all invited to attend.
I'll be out of town.
Oh, sorry about that. And if you do attend, I'll make sure you're treated with all the due respect you deserve. After sitting through a few of these meetings, I have a great deal of empathy and admire all of you for the roles you take in serving the city. My mantra that I always try to live by is always assume best intentions. And I assume all of you do the same. And all of you try to adhere to the mission statement, which is on the wall behind me, which says preserve and improve why people would like to live and work in Norwalk, Iowa. And I'd like to just tell you about a brief thing that I heard last week. Many of you go by the dollar store, and there's a lady there that always sells sweet corn and fruits and vegetables. And last week it was very hot. And I rode one day a Ragbri, so I know how hot it was. But this gentleman came in, and a Norwalk resident, and said, you have 6 things of sweet corn left. And when you sell those, you can go home. And she said, yes, I can. So the gentleman bought all 6, and then he proceeded to stand by the street and hand them to cars as they went by. So that's pretty typical of a Norwalk resident. Yeah, so I'm proud to live here, and I've lived here since May of 22, so I haven't been here real long. But I admire what happened by the Dollar Tree, or not the Dollar Tree, Dollar General, sorry. But based on the mission statement, I'd like to request the city council to reconsider how they voted the last time when they approved the addition to the density. And the reason for that is, and I'm going to rehash a little bit about an email that I sent to all of you. And the email basically says the increased density really isn't needed. I mean, I Googled how many rental units were available in Norwalk and this past week, and I came up with 116, I believe. And I know some units are coming online after listening to the last city council meeting. And then based on this complex, there could be a possible additional 400 units in the next couple of years, which to me, what that's going to do is cause some of the rents to drop, which is good for some renters. But it's going to diminish the property values of the current rental units, because the way you value an apartment complex is you do a discounted cash flow, which is your revenues less your expenses, and you project it over a current interest rate. So, I mean, I heard at the last meeting that one apartment complex is already requesting a reduction of its tax valuation. And by allowing too much residential building or rental building, you're gonna have quite a few more doing the same thing. And you could even possibly have the new complex, because even though it's gonna be brand new and there's a certain cost to it, the value really is based on occupancy in the amount they can collect in the rental market.
I'm gonna ask that you wrap it up.
Okay,
You have
Right.
time.
I'm out of time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for listening.
Thanks. Any other public comment? Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve second reading
I got a
as amended?
comment.
Sure.
So I'm looking at this, section 5. And the last thing, the development layout should generally conform to the concept site plan included as exhibit B. So I'm not sure
I'll get to it.
exactly what the site plan is exhibit B.
Exhibit B was the circle image. It was the very first thing after.
Is this what's on the screen?
Yes. Yep.
I'm not in agreement with that at all.
Okay.
Generally, I said last time, I don't agree with the street down the middle that cuts in
Okay.
half, that allows 800 people to make it a through, a cheap way to get there. And I don't agree with where the parking, where the general extra parking is. So I'm in agreement with everything else.
We can
But I
strike
would
that
like
last.
that line
Yep.
removed for a future discussion. I mean, it's not what I understood we were discussing before. Mr. Lester told me to get off that topic because it wasn't what we were discussing before, and he was right, but now it is. So I don't want that in there.
And
I
that,
agree with you on the road piece.
and that language was all staff developed. So, you know, it was our attempt to literally.
I know,
for
but
the-
I appreciate the effort,
Yep.
truly. I'm just asking if
Yeah, we can do that.
I would like
Can we
that
cut-
last section out.
Can we change it to building location?
Can I just add, David, real quick? Is there some reason that you couldn't add this entire packet?
I mean, you could, but to what Jackie just mentioned, there are details in that packet that, you know, people may want to look at differently.
And that
And
was not the subject of
yes,
the original issue. I mean, I know, I feel like obviously we had a really lengthy discussion. We talked about a lot of things at the last meeting, but and I wanted to be very clear that, right, you're gonna do this, these are the specifications. I appreciate that effort. I just don't, I don't agree with this layout, so I'd like that part to be for future discussion. So if I were to make a motion, I would make a motion to approve the second reading, but as the amended section 5 to remove the final bullet point.
Okay. I'll second that.
Have we heard it all from any schools? The schools usually are dislike the apartments, and everything we see coming through here is apartments, apartments, apartments. We got them coming up on 50th. On the next reading, we've got a whole bunch of them across the street from me. Hubble.
At the city school meeting, we mentioned this, and that there were gonna be studios available. We picked up on that immediately, that's gonna be a great place for our new teachers to be able to.
Well,
live.
that is a positive. We heard that, but did they mention anything about the density and the numbers?
No,
They
didn't
used
say
to
anything about
mention it all the time. Maybe it's a new leader.
It's a new leader.
that. It is a new lead.
DT
Couple
was,
of new leaders.
DT had a one-man band for a while.
But
Okay, I feel like we're becoming a lot of apartments.
Okay. I got a motion by Livingston to amend section 5, parcel 3 to remove the last bullet. And a second by Lester. Any further discussion?
I just want to say one thing. I have received and reviewed and appreciate the comments that I have gotten from the community. I appreciate you coming tonight. I appreciate you saying what you have to say. This design, as much as a 5-story apartment in the middle of town is undesirable, this design is, I like this design as compared to what it could be. So that's why my vote is yes, because they have the right to put an apartment there. They didn't have to come and ask us for any variance and they could have just done it. I like the thoughtful effort that they've gone to. I like the design. I like the actual number of people who are going to be there compared to how many that could be there. So I hear you. I do. And I appreciate your comments. And this, in my mind, is the better option of what we could be presented with. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
No.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
No.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7JI is consideration to table until September 7th, 2023, the consideration of the third reading of an ordinance amending the legacy PUD within the city of Norwalk, Iowa by allowing the homes per acre in PUD parcel 3 to be up to 25 and to exempt 20 studio apartments from the city's balcony and patio requirements. So under normal procedures, the third reading of this ordinance would occur at our August 17th meeting. Due to some absences of individual council members, the council is being asked to wait until the September 7th meeting to consider the third reading of this ordinance. Luke or Jim, anything else? Okay. Any discussion or questions, comments from council? Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Oh, motion by Rivas, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Baker,
No.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
No.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7K is a second reading of an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Norwalk, Iowa by rezoning 118 acres on and east of 50th Avenue and north of Beardsley Street from AR, PC, and R160 for the Maple Heights PUD. So we had first reading of this change at our last meeting. I'll note that folks from the North Shore Development were present at the last meeting, and the developer of this property and the owner of the North Shore property are working well together to make sure this one and North Shore tie in well together. And I appreciate both parties' willingness to work together on this. Luke, you got anything else?
Nothing new to add.
All right, any discussion, question from council?
Second.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Lester. Any further discussion?
Too many apartments.
Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker.
No.
All right, motion carries. Item 7L is a second reading of an ordinance amending the Norwalk Code of Ordinances, chapter 135.14, capital improvements projects, cost sharing. So back in 2013, city council approved a cost sharing policy to share the costs of improvements with benefiting properties. Recently had discussion about the reconstruction of Golden Valley Drive, and how it isn't feasible to install some improvements at every property. It's also noted that improvements such as sidewalks may not be installed directly on each property, but sidewalks benefit the entire neighborhood. This change is to allow for flexibility in where improvements are installed and how they are assessed. Wayne, you got anything else?
No, sir.
Any questions or comments from council?
Is the basic the same? Is the basic calculations and all of the algorithms the same as what we did on Wilson Valley and Lakewood? I understand the two sides of the sidewalk, some of that makes sense, but the rest of it is the same. We're consistent.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out exactly how we do the sidewalk, but everything else will be the same.
All right. Any other questions? Discussion for council or public comment?
Motion. Second.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reva. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston, Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8, future agenda items. Does anybody have anything that they want to see on the agenda?
Will we have a quorum next meeting? Am I allowed to ask that question?
I believe we were going to have a one next meeting.
Do you want anything on the flag request? With the
Banner.
Yeah, the banner request.
Yes.
Would you want that to be a discussion of a proposed ordinance, or should we just set public hearing for September 7th and start the rezoning process?
You mean,
Is it rezoning?
The amendment process?
PUD or?
If we do it specifically to the PUD, it's a zoning amendment. If we change the entirety of the code, it's a zoning amendment either way. So we could have a discussion at the next meeting I can lay out 2 options and you can tell me which way to go.
No, I don't care which way we go. I just was trying to think of what the.
Sure.
quickest way to do
And then
it
it'll
was
have to go to
right,
P and Z also, of course, before you can have a final vote on it.
Anytime fitness.
Yeah.
Permanent, you got their things. I don't know what makes a difference. Whatever.
No comment on that one.
but- Right, so however,
Go get that through as quick as possible.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, any others? Hearing none, we'll go to item 9, council choirs and staff updates. Jim?
Nothing.
Staff? David?
The North, I have to look at this, North and Middle River Watershed Management Authority met. We approved our bylaws and are functioning now, getting ready to apply for DNR grants to get all of that group going. So it's basically Adair County to Carlisle is all involved in this, and it's anybody that flows into the North and Middle Rivers and getting some grants and doing those so that the watershed is built up properly. Correct. Okay. Just access to federal dollars. This was either 20D. I don't remember how long ago we approved this, but it's probably going to be coming back because we added 5 or 6 new members at this meeting as well, approved they're adding to it. There should be very little funding from very little. Most of the others have less than $1,000 ever that go out to any from one entity to that, so. That's it.
I know the Middle River's pretty good for kayaking. I wish the North would be a little better too.
Well, and I think that's part of what this will help address. One of those,
Cool. Awesome. Ed?
Just one, Mayor, my wife was really impressed with her soiree in the ambulance and the equipment that we have. And I gotta tell you what, some of the equipment that we have in there, they had to bring her down our steps. And they've got this really nifty chair that works on tracks. It's like tank tread. And it was awesome. And she said she didn't feel a thing. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't it great, the equipment that we're able to provide now to do a better service for our citizens in the community? I mean, that's really a good deal. And so I guess I want to commend everybody that's involved in, not just the staff themselves that conduct that service, so they did an excellent job. Everybody that's involved in the planning and the acquisition and the organization, that's a lot of people. It's a lot of different people. City administrative staff are involved in that process. But anyway, it turned out to be a really good product and really appreciate all the work.
All right, thank you. Luke?
Yeah, we ended up with 12 permits in July, which resulted in June and July being a little bit down from what we would expect from an average year. But just to show the ebbs and flows of things, we've had 13 submitted so far in August. So you just never know. It comes and goes. typical grass and weed nuisances and junk vehicle type things that we normally see in the summer. We are specifically, again, trying to keep attention on the Norwalk Central Hughes area. So we've been working with Starbucks. I know there was some pretty long vegetation there. I'm not paid attention when I drove home yesterday, and I guess I'll look today. I don't know if they got it knocked down yet or not, but they said they were going to get out there and get on it. So trying to just, again, stay on top of that area. The garage and tree that we gave some grant money to at 9189 Orchard Drive has been removed, so that's good. If you do happen to drive by it, you'll see a sliding glass door that's about 15 feet off the ground. So you would be right to be concerned about that. But we've ensured that a board's installed on that so that the door cannot be opened from the inside from a safety perspective. They do plan to build a new deck off of that, at which point we can remove that board. So we've got some new stormwater controls. We've been working a lot with Hubble at Holland Point to make sure that hillside coming down to Elizabeth Holland Park is good, stabilized. And we've got good controls on that just because that's direct tributary to our basin. So we've got some good stuff out there. And then just on the stormwater thing, I was going to mention this during the item tonight, but it wasn't really germane to that. But you know, we sat in the Capitol Crossroads stuff for a couple of years, learned a lot about stormwater and those things. And to a T, what we talked about tonight were the issues that other cities have had to deal with a lot more than we have. That has brought us to approving these Capitol Crossroads things that we did a while back. So that's good. But I just wanted to let you know, other cities have struggled with that almost to a T. They end up feeling bad that it's the private property owner's responsibility, that, you know, there's a desire to maybe help, but at the end of the day, that's how it is. And so it's not an uncommon thing, especially in developments that were from the mid-90s to early 2000s. So not surprised that that's happening in some of the developments from that area in town. We might see more in other areas. But going forward, we have better rules in place. So all I got.
Okay, thanks. Carrie,
Nothing tonight.
Wayne?
Want to give you a brief update on the Beardsley project. We've asked for an updated schedule. They've been making great progress when they're out there working. This contractor is aggressive and they're working hard on it. Similar problem as what we had on North Avenue. There's utility conflicts. That is slowing them down a little bit, but I think they're still on schedule for before. That put them around mid-September to have that section of Beardsley open east of Marketplace. So you'd be able to get through on Beardsley over to Marketplace, that's Highway 28. I'll have an updated schedule here in the next few days and I can update you on that. North Avenue fall seeding date here opens up mid-August, so we'll get that cleaned up. Mid-Am's wrapping up their work now. We'll get that cleaned up, finalized. That's it.
All right, thanks. Chief?
I just want to thank council again for the approval of the staff. It's going to go a long ways to provide some stability and reliability to our department, so we can continue to provide the services to the community that everyone is expecting. So I do appreciate that a lot. I also want to let everyone know that we're doing a school supply drive on Saturday, August 5th from 8 a.m. to noon. We're going to be on the front tarmac, fire truck and firefighters and Sparky the dog to come by and drop off your school supplies, and we'll be donating those back to the Norwalk schools.
Great.
That's all. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. Chief?
Yes, last Friday, we had a life event. Despite the ridiculously oppressive heat, we went to the Warren County Fair, and I believe the kids and the chief all had fun. Officer Criswell and Officer Dunn, our office coordinator Howie, and I went down with the kids, watched some horse shows, and drank a lot of water. Next Wednesday is our final front porch Norwalk event of the year, from 6 to 8 p.m. The mayor's out of town. You want to ride around with me? You're welcome. Just let me know. And
It's fun.
And what's that?
It's fun.
Yeah, we'll stop and talk to whoever's out there. And lastly, I want to thank Sergeant Lewiston for sitting in my seat last meeting. I tried to make him feel better because I told him that, much to my wife's chagrin, I listened to the whole 4-hour meeting.
Oh, wow.
On the computer in the car as we traveled across West Virginia and Ohio. And
Did you make her listen to it too?
But
Did you make her listen to it too?
well, she had to. Because it was- She did tell me she was gonna buy me an earbud.
You're just gonna say instead of your.
Yeah,
Well, she's a city employee. It was interesting to her.
that's right.
I didn't authorize that overtime.
Very interesting to us.
So anyways, he wasn't impressed. But anyways, that's all I have.
All right, thanks. Gene.
Maybe you should buy her.
Yeah.
The auditors were here this week and they completed their field work today. They had nothing negative to report, which is really good. Want to thank Carrie and Lindsay and other staff for helping. These two helped a bunch. Great. Denman's great to work with. They're so helpful, efficient, professional. Just a great group. I'm so glad we went with them. And I'm just continuing to work on year-end reports, and I'll be bringing them to you. You approved one tonight. I'll just bring them to you as we get completed.
Thanks. Holly.
WHO Channel 13's been giving Norwalk lots of love lately. So if you guys see any of those newscasters anywhere, thank them. They really love Norwalk. Mayor and I were on a couple weeks ago for developments, and then Luke Nilsson and Ty, they were on today live at 4:30, I think it was. I recorded it all from behind the scenes, but if anybody watched it, it was really good. They're talking about Luke's new podcast series that seems to be really popular.
It was Ty's idea.
Okay. No, it's really good. People enjoy it. They can multitask, listen to it, learn some stuff about the city. So you guys did a really good job there today on that. Mayor and my team were out at the site of our new field house building today, which looks amazing. That is enormous when you're standing inside of it and the walls are up and you can kind of see what it's going to look like. I'm really super jealous that you get to be out there. You guys want to stuff my apartment like in the storage area or something? We'd love to have. Anyway, looks great. They're all on time. Everything's moving forward really well. The parking lot, like we mentioned, they just have striping left. That's about it. So things are going really well out there. And then we did get notice today from the consulate that the president of Kosovo is coming in October, and they would like Norwalk to be involved somehow. So I'm involved your team, but Jackie, you know, yes. So just be ready for that. And then she comes. So.
All right, Adam.
I'll just piggyback off Holly a little bit. As everyone knows, the field house going up, west and north walls are on. The roof is installed on the west side, currently working on the east wall and that roof. And like you said, just needs striping of the lot and then that will be done. Pool wise, gonna stay open till August 20th, even as the football team and college kids start to leave. Sean Visa has worked the schedule to stay open the entire time, as well as having the slide going. And then the doggy dive will be August 20th, 5:30 to 6:30. So bring your favorite pets over there and go swimming. Other than that, I'll just toot our own horn. Our small little department, Parks and Recreation, have been absolutely killing it lately. I know everyone's super busy and everything's got everything going on, so I don't know if this gets expressed enough. But we are absolutely, every single day out there grinding, making sure we give ample opportunities to anyone and everyone in town, whether you're young or old. Just like to hopefully provide something for everyone. So I just wanted to our own horn here a little bit.
All right,
Thank you.
great, thanks. Lindsay. Brian.
I stopped in and talked to the auditors a couple times just to poke in and see how it was going, and they said the same thing about our staff. They were way impressed and love working with our staff.
Good. Awesome.
Very good.
Good. Jackie. Luke.
I do have a few items. Since you just talked about the auditors, I will mention, Adam, you might want to throw something to me at this point. Auditors came in and they usually do some kind of an interview with me, ask a few questions if there's anything of interest. We talked about a number of items. I said that Lindsay, Jean, and I specifically, we have one of the items in our project management list says employee theft. And we just think about it on a regular basis. What are things that we can do to make sure that doesn't happen? And the auditor was grinning ear to ear when he heard that. And I said, so my question to you is, do you have any tips, advice? Is there something that we should be focusing on or taking a close look at? And he said, usually the biggest problem was where people take in cash. I said, okay, so who takes in cash? And he said, well, we've got a few different locations. And he said, library, parks, you know, we even do here. And I said, well, let's start at the parks. So he said, all right, we'll go take a look. So he kind of went out and did a little heavy scrutiny out at the parks. But they haven't found anything. It's just something that this is us making sure that everybody understands. We're very attentive and we want to make sure we have no problems audit wise. So you can tell your staff they had to go through a little extra headache because of me. Sorry, Adam.
We'll let it slide.
I will also be out of town next week. The gentleman that spoke here, they are great hosts. My son and I stopped by there one year. They did a good job. And I really want to thank Ty. It was her idea to go to the podcast. And that has worked very well. I was walking out of the Home Depot the other night picking up something. And I recognized somebody from Lakewood and they came up and said, hey, I just listened to your podcast the other day. So it's interesting that people really are attentive to that. I would have thought video was better, but she made a good judgment call there.
You're not gonna get a big head, are you?
No. Listen to a few of them and tell me what you think. I'm sure it'll shrink.
You'll get better.
Yeah. That is true. As we've been having conversations with people, that works better. Of course, the mayor and I.
We went long.
Yeah, it went about 30 minutes, so we're gonna try to shrink those up. And the last thing I'll mention is we did have a good city school meeting. You know, I enjoyed Kate and DT. They were great assets to the city. Sean and Jake being those two main individuals we meet with, as long as Mary Beth also met with us. So I think they're settling in well into those positions. It continues to be some good, healthy discussions, good relationship with the school. That's all.
All right, thank you. I'll again say thanks for Chief for the cops officer and for the 3 part-time for 3 full-time. I appreciate it. Jackie is going to be handling community chat on Saturday, August the 12th. So be here and stump Jackie. That's all I have. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reba. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same. We're adjourned, 8:09 PM.
Yeah.